Big 12 picks. Who is playing for the conference title? Who's winning this conference? The identity of this conference, I can't stress this enough, is different than it was last year. Last year, really the last few years, it's been very competitively balanced. It's looked like the Pac-12 looks this year. That is not it. I am telling you, there is a slam dunk favorite in this conference, and it's Texas. There is a slam dunk number 2, and that's Oklahoma. That means nothing once they kick it off. But there is a separation, in my mind, there's a separation of Tier 1, and it may just be Texas alone in Tier 1, but Oklahoma's up there too. So like I said, that guarantees nothing, especially in this conference. I know that. How competitive is Tier 2, though? Or am I even right about Tier 1? Or will it all just be one giant Tier 2? You know what the hidden story is in the Big 12? The depth of coaching talent is insane here. All the good coaches aren't just in 2 conferences, guys. Go past Sark and Brent Venables. Frankly, we got more questions about those guys than we have about half a dozen other coaches in the conference. Chris Kleiman at Kansas State is excellent. Think about what Leipold's doing at Kansas, and he's going to have the most returning production in the country this year. Let's see what he does with it. Dave Aranda is just hanging out at Baylor. Matt Campbell's at Iowa State, and all of a sudden his program's fallen off the lead pack a little bit, and everyone's forgotten about him. Mike Gundy is still at Oklahoma State. Joey McGuire is doing and is in the process of continuing to do great things at Texas Tech. Could really flash on the national radar this year. Gus Malzahn is now a Big 12 head coach. And you may be thinking to yourself, okay, but that's it, right? Like, surely he's not just going to keep naming names. Guys, I didn't even list the dude who just took his team to the national title last year. Sonny Dykes is at TCU. We just got to the 8th name I listed. And, by the way, this guy played for a national title last year. They're really deep. They're really deep and talented at the coaching position. And while those guys don't take the field, they impact things in a big way. The sleeper team in this conference, I think, is Texas Tech. And unlike the SEC, in the Big 12, if you're a sleeper team, you could legitimately win the conference. Like Texas Tech's unranked in the AP right now. Couldn't be us in the JP poll. We got them in the top 25. If you're looking for a team that could bottle that sort of TCU energy from last year, I think it could be Texas Tech even more than TCU this year. There is a thought floating around the college football sphere, false, I might add, but it's floating nonetheless, that I don't like TCU, which is insane. I'll address it in a second. But Texas Tech, that over-under 7.5 wins, man, if they get off to a hot start, that Oregon game in week 2 is so underrated because it's the same day Texas plays Bama. Utah goes to Baylor that day. Wild day in the Big 12. But don't overlook that game out there in Lubbock. How many kids in Eugene, Oregon, you think have ever been to Lubbock, Texas? How many dudes on the coaching staff have ever been to Lubbock, Texas? I would love to sit that coaching staff down. No guide, no Google. Take this pen and point to Lubbock, Texas on this map of the state of Texas. Some folks would get exposed. Anyway, so all those coaches plus Sark and Venables, but the sleeper team aside from Texas Tech in the Big 12, I think's Kansas. And we were kind of going back and forth. Well, should we mention Kansas? Well, of course, shame on you, Jesse. Of course we should mention Kansas. Because Jesse was the one standing in the way, not me. Number 1 in returning production. This is a very controversial stat. It's like returning production is the new returning starters stat. So there are people who care about returning starters, and there are people, like me, who couldn't care less about it. Well, the people who couldn't care less about returning starters, we lean on things like returning production. And then the stat nerd crowd looks down on us and says, there's so many more important things. I didn't say it was the end-all, be-all. I'm not going Miss Cleo on you and claiming that this stat and this stat alone tells me everything I need to know. I just think it's noteworthy. That's all. I don't see a lot of randos winning conference titles, so I like to know a few names on the backs of the jerseys. They experienced everything last year at Kansas. They started hot, just like Illinois. Then they cooled off and lost their quarterback in the process. That is Big 12 preseason player of the year, Jalen Daniels at quarterback, by the way. So watch Kansas and TCU, okay? So everyone claims I hate TCU now because I made the grave mistake of saying I don't think they'll finish top 4 in the conference. Well, I got news for you. I didn't predict them to go to the national title last year either, and they did that. So whomst really cares? But I don't think they're going to finish top 4, only because they have to hit on all these portal moves. That's what happens when you lose what they lost, player-wise and coach-wise. Maybe they just completely shot the moon. Maybe they did. I am in the skeptical, have to see it to believe it camp, but Chandler Morris still there at quarterback. Still there. They start off with Colorado. They're going to be on national TV. They're going to win that game. Spoiler alert. And so we'll see. They got a tough little treacherous month of November at Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor at OU. So those are sleepers. But look, we're here to talk about conference championships and conference winners, are we not? Before I reveal it, I want to tell you, do not give up on teams in this conference when they lose a game. Do not give up on teams in this conference when they lose 2 games. Ryan McGrady special here from Stats and Info. The last 3 Big 12 champs have all had 2 or more conference losses. Not even out of conference, guys. They are winning conferences out there with 2 losses in league play. So it's, in some ways, only just getting good once teams start losing. Conference championship, I'm taking Texas, but I'm taking them over Oklahoma State, a team I think is going to come out of nowhere and surprise people this year after they fell off a cliff last year. Let me first start with the Cowboys. So Mike Gundy's really good, and Mike Gundy knows what he's doing, and it looks like his roster got gutted by the transfer portal. I think it's one of the bigger illusions right now in the Big 12. I think they added some good pieces too. Extremely underrated on the defensive line. I would implore them to figure out the quarterback position, but I think they will, and I think there's a level of play that I'll get at the quarterback position out of them that's going to have them right in the thick of things. And the other thing you need to keep in mind is their schedule is insanely workable. I want you to think about the sentence that's about to come out of my mouth. Oklahoma State plays in the Big 12. They play 1 team in the state of Texas the entire year, and it's Houston. They don't play Baylor. They don't play TCU. They don't play Texas. They don't play Texas Tech. How is this possible? I don't know. But if they find their footing, and they've got time to, because their first conference game's Iowa State, and then they got a bye week, they could do this. But eventually, if they make it to the conference title game, I got Texas waiting there, and Texas will win that game, and I think Texas will win the Big 12 championship. They've got everything I need and then some. They extend beyond just a Big 12 favorite in my mind. However, it's new territory for them if they get there. How many losses do they have if they get there? Big difference between an 11-1 or 12-1 in that case, Big 12 champ, and like an 11-2 or I don't know. I mean, if they could even theoretically get there with just 10 wins. If you got that, that's the peak of the mountain for you this year. Still be really good, still a really good year. But if they're a playoff contender, this will be a formality. If Texas is good enough to make the playoff, they will stand far and above out in the Big 12. Now, what I didn't do is focus on Oklahoma a lot. It's almost like I think Oklahoma is going to be pretty good, so I don't have them as a sleeper. I also don't see them peaking to the degree that they're in the conference championship game. Therefore, in a conference prediction, in a conference championship prediction, I didn't really have much to say about them. I've covered Oklahoma a lot this spring and summer. I just didn't have a lot to say about them there. So I got Texas over Oklahoma State. And I'm either going to be really, really right or really, really wrong there. It's a very, very tough conference to predict.